Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to look at the matchups. We're just going to go through, look at rest of season rankings for these running backs, primarily focusing in on weeks of 15, 16, 17, because that's when the points will matter. That's when we're going to be in our fantasy football playoffs, and anything that you did before then, at that point, doesn't freaking matter. It's about, can you get points for me today? So before we get into it, make sure you go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them down there in the comment section. And in that comment section, go check out Underdog Fantasy. When you sign up with promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to 100. Check out all these cool player props. I'd be looking at the over on Travis Etienne this week. And when you sign up with promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to 100. And you can get in a ton of fun fantasy football drafts with us next week. But I think that should be about it. Let's go through. Let's dive into this. Starting off with the first tier. Despite having a bad performance this past week, I don't care. We're going to go Derrick Henry. I still think the Tennessee Titans will be good going forward. Most importantly, very good playoff schedule for Derrick Henry, where you get to go up against the Houston Texans. Where I'd approximate that Derrick Henry probably has anywhere from 180 to 300 rushing yards, give or take maybe 5 or 4. And also, if we're looking at Derrick Henry, you get to go up against the Los Angeles Chargers. Obviously, a much better football team, but how do you beat the Chargers? You run on the Chargers, and I think the Titans will be able to do that with Derrick Henry. Very safe option. I know it was bad against the Philadelphia Eagles, but the Eagles were just a tough team to go against. Now, our next guy is going to be Austin Ekeler at 2. With Austin Ekeler, of course, these rankings are for a full PPR format. With Ekeler, I am a little worried. And I repeat, just a little worried, because in a full PPR league, he is the running back 1 overall, obviously, and we're moving him down to 2. So this is showing you how worried I am about Keenan Allen and Mike Williams both being healthy together. And while, yeah, this may be a much better offense because of so, at the same time, maybe they eat into the target share of Ekeler just a bit. And then at 3, as a tier 1 running back, I know it's bold. I know we're going out on a limb, but specifically because the playoff schedule in weeks 15, 16, 17, remember about 2 months ago when his value was in the gutter, we were saying to go out there and buy him. Jonathan Taylor. With Jonathan Taylor, I think for that fantasy football playoff stretch, he is going to be a top tier RB. Keep in mind, he is on bye this week, however. So if you're fighting to get into the playoffs this week, maybe you're not going to evaluate him this highly. I just love the schedule, love the player, and he was okay in the toughest matchup imaginable against the Dallas Cowboys this past week. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go Christian McCaffrey at 4. Looks like even with Elijah Mitchell banged up, they're still going to go out there and use a backup running back with Jordan Mason. So it's frustrating that he's in a pseudo running back by committee, but obviously he's catching the ball out of the backfield. He has that receiving down role. A little bit worried about how many weapons are in San Francisco, and I don't think Brock Purdy makes a big difference with how we rank these guys. At 5, it pains me to do this, Josh Jacobs. With Josh Jacobs in a half PPR format this season, he's the running back 1 overall, my most drafted player in fantasy football. I would love to rank him as that top tier guy. You know, we have him in our top tier in our fantasy football rankings this week. Quick side note, I'm recording this before the Thursday night game. But going forward for the fantasy football playoff stretch, specifically when in the championship game, he has to play the 49ers. I hate the schedule. I hate the matchups. Love the player. I am rooting for him. I mean, my bank account's really rooting for him. It's just such a brutal schedule for the fantasy football playoffs. Now, at 6, we are going to have Saquon Barkley. A full PPR format, he will catch the ball. He's had some very tough matchups as of late. You're really hoping that the Giants' offensive line is able to get healthier going forward for the playoff stretch. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go Nick Chubb at 7 with the assumption that Deshaun Watson improves as a quarterback going forward. If Deshaun Watson's as bad as he was his first week back against Houston Texans throughout the rest of the season, yes, you should probably be pretty damn worried about Nick Chubb, but nope, I think Watson is going to get better. I think it was just his first game in 2 years. We'll go Chubb at 7. A running back that I want to have like up there at running back 4, running back 5, Joe Mixon. I mean, with Joe Mixon, this is another guy that I think from a talent perspective, from an offensive scheme perspective, Mixon should be in the tier above. It just comes down to the fantasy football playoff schedule. It sucks that a lot of these running backs that we love have brutal schedules like Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon, and someone else we're about to get to. But at 9, we are going to be going with Ramondre Stevenson. Obviously, with Stevenson, you're more excited in that full PPR format, less excited in that non-PPR league. Operating as the top receiver in this New England Patriots, I don't want to say wide receiver, on their roster. I mean, the man goes out there, gets 7-8 receptions every single game, literally being used how Alvin Kamara has been throughout his entire career. And then at 10, we are going to go DeAndre Swift. Now, DeAndre Swift did pop up on the injury report this Wednesday. He got in a limited practice. And yes, it's always scary to see DeAndre Swift dealing with an ankle injury. This will be something we have to continue to monitor. But at this point, I'm not that concerned. At this point, I'm willing to see what we had with DeAndre Swift last week and say, well, you know what? If this running back with this talent profile can get 7 targets a game in a great offense for the Detroit Lions, we're all about it. I mean, the Lions have a phenomenal offense right now. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go Dalvin Cook at 11. With Dalvin Cook, I mean, pseudo 3-down running back. There's not too much to discuss. I'd actually rank him a little bit higher this week, given the matchup against Detroit. Then at 12, someone that I would love to have up there as a borderline top 5 guy, but because the fantasy football playoff schedule, James Conner's going to have to be down here at 12. Last time we saw James Conner, he played 63 out of 65 snaps. But I mean, not even just the fantasy football playoff schedule, even starting off this week where he's going up against the New England Patriots, James Conner just has a brutal schedule going forward. You feel very bad for the man. I mean, especially all the owners that held him through the injury, where he has been very good upon return. He's had the perfect role. It's just a tough spot to overcome those matchups. And then at 13, we are going to be going with Travis Etienne. I know everybody's concerned about Travis Etienne because he injured the foot 2 weeks back, so he gave you no points in the Baltimore game. This past week, the Jacksonville Jaguars get boat raced against the Detroit Lions, which will occasionally happen if you play for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So yes, Travis Etienne hasn't given you production in a few weeks now. Don't overreact. Travis Etienne played 90% of the snaps for the Jacksonville Jaguars this past week. Travis Etienne's a running back that can catch the ball out of the backfield. Travis Etienne's a great player. You're really just sitting here hoping that the offense is better in Jacksonville. And then at 14, someone that I have no idea how to rank, Kenneth Walker. Please, for the love of God, my most drafted running backs, Josh Jacobs, Kenneth Walker. I thought they were going to be the number 1 and number 2 league-winning running backs this season. Jacobs gets the brutal playoff schedule. Kenneth Walker now dealing with an injury. We're being left in the dark right now with this injury for Kenneth Walker. What's very frustrating is if he were to miss week 14, he still doesn't get that long of a break for week 15. They play on Thursday night, week 15. I'm really hoping he comes back this week. I'm really hoping he's back for the first week of the playoffs. If he was healthier, he would be ranked higher, but it's hard to rank him with the injury. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go Alvin Kamara and Aaron Jones back-to-back. Both running backs that are on bye. Both running backs that have been disappointing as of late. Both running backs that look like they are in poor offenses. Now, with Kamara, I think he should be getting a bump up with the Mark Ingram injury, but keep in mind, it's not necessarily that Ingram has been taking away too many fantasy points. It's that this offense hasn't provided you with many. I mean, with Alvin Kamara, even if the New Orleans Saints get to the red zone, even if the New Orleans Saints in this horrendous offense can march down the field, there's always the outside shot that Taysom Hill vultures the touchdown, which is going to be very frustrating. And with Aaron Jones, very similar, like a worse version of Austin Eckler. I'd be a little concerned with the target share looks like, because obviously that's the only thing valuable with Aaron Jones here. If all of a sudden we finally have Randall Cobb, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Allen Lazard all healthy at the same time. That'd be the first time this season. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go Tony Pollard at 17. I really want to put Tony Pollard in the same tier as Alvin Kamara, in the same tier as Aaron Jones. Pollard obviously is going to be ranked higher for us this week against the Houston Texans, where the Dallas Cowboys should be able to just run the ball over and over and over again. But the Ezekiel Elliott role is not going anywhere. And then our next two guys are going to be committee running backs, Rachaad White and Leonard Fournette. On the opposite end of the spectrum, if we were looking at this week's set of rankings, you need to move Rachaad White and Leonard Fournette lower than this. Going up against the 49ers, the toughest matchup you can find for a running back, where right now the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have the second lowest implied team total this week. So for this week, week 14, Pollard is a lot higher This week, week 14, White and Fournette are a lot lower, but these are going to be rest of season, preferably looking at weeks 15, 16, 17. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go Miles Sanders at 20. Not too much to discuss with Miles Sanders. You got a lot of points scored in Philadelphia, but they can score those points with 10 different players. I think we've talked enough about Sanders this season. Going over to 21, Ezekiel Elliott. Yes, Zeke, you rank him higher specifically for the Houston Texans matchup, but rest of season, I do think Tony Pollard is the guy in Dallas. Tony Pollard is definitely the player that has the usage as a passing down running back. I mean, I know that Zeke's in there to block, but still, Pollard gets the targets. Now, 22, we're going to go Dameon Pierce. With Dameon Pierce, if you think the Houston Texans offense can rebound, he can be higher than this. If you have faith that the Houston Texans offense can get better, where they can be similar to the Jacksonville Jaguars, then yeah, feel free to move Dameon Pierce up. Personally, I have no faith in that happening. Personally, I've been out on the Houston Texans all year. I've called Davis Mills the worst starting quarterback. I mean, I think this is a very bad team. I think if you're a Houston Texans fan, you're waiting for 2-3 years down the road where you get those first-round picks for Houston and Deshaun Watson's trade turning into some talent. Now, going over to 23, we will have Naji Harris. Similar spot to Dameon Pierce, running back that's used as a pseudo 3-down bell cow, but with Naji Harris and a bad offense in Pittsburgh. The reason we're going to go Dameon Pierce ahead of Naji is Dameon Pierce is 100% healthy, where we've seen Naji dealing with a couple different things this season. Then we're going to go Jamal Williams at 24. Jamal Williams, if DeAndre Swift were to deal with an ankle injury, if this ankle injury is more serious for DeAndre Swift than I am initially thinking, then yeah, you probably will end up needing to move Jamal Williams up these rankings just slightly. At the time I'm recording this, though, not worried about the DeAndre Swift ankle. I'm going to be assuming that DeAndre Swift is taking over. Jamal Williams will be boom bust just based off if he gets a touchdown or not. Then our last running back in this tier, very similar to Naji Harris, Dameon Pierce, pseudo 3-down running back in a horrendous offense. We are going to have David Montgomery. Now with David Montgomery, we're moving him to the bottom end of this tier, whereas if you would have looked at our rankings a week ago, 2 weeks ago, he would have been much higher than this. But that was because back then, we didn't think Darrynton Evans was going to get used. The first week you had with no Khalil Herbert, David Montgomery saw pretty much every single touch out of this backfield. Since then, Darrynton Evans has worked in here, so I'm a little bit more concerned about the workload with Montgomery, but all these running backs in this tier are very comparable. But now dropping down to our next spot, we're going to go Brian Robinson at 16. Brian Robinson's actually started to catch the ball a bit. Brian Robinson's looked pretty damn good over the past month. I mean, it's hard to argue against him. I don't think this is a great Washington offense, if I'm going to be honest. You still have Antonio Gibson getting involved. You still have Antonio Gibson drawing the majority of the targets out of the backfield. So just view Brian Robinson as that first and second down running back with a little more juice. Same thing with Isaiah Pacheco at 27. I know there's some uncertainty on how these Chiefs running backs are going to be deployed down the stretch. I still think Isaiah Pacheco is the guy. I still think Isaiah Pacheco is not going to catch the ball out of the backfield. He will be used on first and second down. So similar player to Brian Robinson. And then at 28, we are going to have Cordell Patterson. Please, Patterson, be better than this. Please be better than this. I am just hesitant knowing that the Atlanta Falcons look like they're looking towards the future. They're sitting Marcus Mariota, bringing in Desmond Ridder. And if you are looking towards the future, if you're saying, let's figure out what this team looks like for 2023 and see if we need to go invest in a quarterback, see what we need to do, wouldn't it make sense that they start to use Tyler Algier a little bit more than Cordell Patterson? Little concerned. I don't think Ridder saves this Atlanta Falcons offense. And then dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go James Cook at 29. James Cook can easily be a running back that moves dramatically higher than this. James Cook, you know what? We will put him in the tier higher. We're going to keep him in that same tier with those other guys. Because if you get one more week from James Cook being the go-to running back in Buffalo, one more week of him playing at a Devin Singletary, that is all I'll need to move James Cook even higher, because we know he can catch the ball out of the backfield and it's a phenomenal offense. But until we get that other week, I'm going to be hesitant just penciling him in right now as that starter. And then dropping it down to tier, we are going to be going with J.K. Dobbins with Dobbins. I know there's a lot of uncertainty. I understand that a lot of people are going to be screaming, no, we need Antonio Gibson here. No, we need D'Onta Foreman here. And if you had to ask me, Mason, who scores more points rest of season? D'Onta Foreman, Hook'em Lawrence, or J.K. Dobbins? I'm betting on D'Onta Foreman. I think D'Onta Foreman most likely outscores J.K. Dobbins. I would bet Antonio Gibson most likely outscores him. But when I'm creating these rankings this low for the fantasy football playoffs, I am looking for ceiling. Do I think D'Onta Foreman in a horrendous Carolina Panthers offense can turn into a top 10 running back? No, I don't think so. Not when he's not going to catch the ball. Not when this is a horrendous Panthers offense. Do I think Antonio Gibson can turn into that top 10 running back with the Brian Robinson usage? Nope. While it's unlikely for that to happen to J.K. Dobbins, it is in the range of outcomes. I don't think we would all be that surprised if Dobbins comes back, is healthy, and then he all of a sudden turns into a running back one in what should be a better offense, combined with the fact that he's a better running back when healthy. So I know that you can make an argument for a couple different guys. This last spot I'm going to reserve for just the pure upside play, though. Now, that's all I got for you. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. Leave a comment if you have any questions. And if you want to check out any of these player props on Underdog Fantasy, if you want to go look at that Travis Etienne line, make sure you sign up with promo code FLOCK. You can find the link in the description and in the comment section. When you sign up with promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $200. But I think that's all I got for you. Again, thank you so much for being a member of the Flock and supporting the channel. Hope you have a great day and hope we get to see you in the live stream tonight.